Good morning and welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the market site in Times Square, we have Tendai Kapfidze. He is the Chief Economist over at Nasdaq listed The Lending Tree. And while it might be a holiday shortened week, we do have a number of key data on top. It's always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Tendai, and business surveys, that's the first thing that you're taking a look at.
Yeah, so the business surveys, they matter in the context of the trade talks, right? Which I think over the weekend we got somewhat of a truce, but I don't know that we really got the ball moving forward in terms of how do we get to resolution.
Well, we kind of are where we were about a year ago is what it sounds like.
Exactly, and the challenge with that is what we've seen in the business surveys like the ISM survey or the PMI surveys or various measures of business confidence is these have been on a pretty much straight downward trend for about six to 8 months. And we're getting to the point where with the ISMs, they have this baseline of 50 points where if they dip below 50, that suggests that the economy is contracting. And we just got the data this morning. One of them was 50.6, I believe, and the other one was just over 51. So we're getting very close to that 50 level where if we dip below that, that might suggest a contraction. And that all has to do with the trade war.
All right, and on Tuesday, auto sales, that's going to be a major focus.
So with auto sales, we like to look at auto sales a lot because it really tells us about the health of the consumer. The car is like the second biggest purchase a consumer makes after the house. And what we've been seeing with auto is that there was some weakness earlier in the year. One of the prints we got, I believe it was in April, was one of the weakest since the financial crisis. So it's starting to look like perhaps people aren't buying as many cars as they were, last year and the year before. And also with this, the trade tensions also play a role in this because the biggest part of trade between the U.S. and Mexico is cars and car accessories and car parts. And some cars actually go back and forth several times before they actually get sold, which might sound a little bit bizarre, but that's how complex the supply chain is.
Do you think that the decline could also be that we're a shared economy right now and people have more access to Ubers and ride sharing?
I think that's definitely a factor, especially in cities like New York.
Yeah.
I think in other parts of the country where the Uber penetration it's not as convenient to use some of these ride sharing services. I've found when I've traveled, I was just in Miami last weekend, and it took us like 20, 30 minutes to get an Uber to leave the airport. So in other parts of the country, it's not quite as convenient.
All right, and on Wednesday, looking at the trade deficit, and this data tends to be a little bit choppy month to month.
Yeah, it's very choppy month to month, so we like to look at the 12-month moving average. And the most recent print, which was April, was actually the weakest for the trade deficit since the financial crisis. So, all this kind of tension we've been having around trade, which I guess the ultimate goal is to improve the trade deficit, actually hasn't done so yet. It's been worsening the trade deficit because both exports have been going down and imports have been going down, but our exports have been going down much faster than our imports, and so the trade deficit is widening.
All right, and to wrap up here, non-farm payrolls on Friday, and a lot of people are going to be checked out at the end of the week, but this is that key piece of employment data that we get each month.
Yeah, I think this is a big one, especially in the context of this whole debate around what the Fed is going to do. So the market right now is thinking the Fed is going to cut in July. I think that might still be a little bit premature for the Fed to do. If the jobs number is strong, it's going to give them some allowance to maybe not cut in July. But if we get a weak job number, expect the market to pretty much, price in a certainty of a rate cut in July, which to my mind would still be somewhat premature. I think the problems in the economy have very little to do with interest rates, the price of credit, or the availability of credit.
Well, I mean, not even that. If you accelerate your interest rate cut, you're not going to have much tools in your tool chest when and if the economy does turn over, because it's cyclical. It will at some point. I mean, Does that concern you that we might be front running it a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're using the wrong tool to try and solve problems, which right now the problems in the economy have a lot to do with these trade issues. Mm-hmm. So for example, if you look at Japan and you look at the EU, right, these are basically central banks which are now inept, right? They have very little influence on the economy because they've been using those tools for the wrong problems when they have structural issues that they really should be addressing. So I fear that if we go for a cut at this stage where the problems in the economy are not related to interest rate or credit availability, we're going to end up with a Fed that's much less effective than it has been historically, and that'll be a big problem for the economy when a real downturn does occur.
All right, Tendai, as always, thank you for joining me at MarketSite, and thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.